Okay, good evening. This is the Community Preservation Committee meeting for May 1st, 2024. I just want to remind everyone that we are recording and this will be available for on LCTV on demand and on their YouTube channel. So our likenesses and whatever we say will be recorded. So we have a pretty simple agenda tonight. The Webster property and all that goes with that for town meeting next Tuesday. Town meeting is Tuesday, May 7th. I don't have any other mail or any other, it feels like a while since we've seen each other, but I don't think there's anything that's really been happening. So shall we get to it? Unfortunately, Amy Green is out of the country, I guess, on vacation, so I'm sure she would be here to help us wade through the project. We do have a copy of it. Let's see, application. So we can start with the eligibility. Jim Dugan, our new town administrator, what Amy had done was she had put this together, of course, because we had kind of a trial run last fall. So she had all of the details together. So Jim just had to kind of go through and put the funding together. Just kind of to recap, the new appraisal came in at 730,000. We are going to ask for another 30,000 for closing costs, anything that's going to happen from here on out once the property, if there's any legal fees. The one thing we're going to have to figure out is if it's our legal team that does the work, whether we can pay our legal team from the CPA. But the 30,000 that will go in is going to be, we'll have it as an up to just, if it doesn't get spent, it doesn't get spent, it goes back to the open space bucket. But the project, the cost for the land is 730 is the new appraisal.
And just for clarification purposes, this is actually coming from the town administrator's office as opposed to the Concom this time around. The Concom hasn't met to formally vote on the acquisition or actually to formally submit an application. So that's why it's from the town administrator's office. Opposed to Concom.
So how did that work then, as far as for it to change hands to conservation, if that's what they choose to do?
So with it being bought for conservation purposes, it would still go to Concom. It's just the applicant is different this time around. And Concom is going to hold a special meeting tomorrow night, which I think they thought that they were going to be voting on the application. But from tonight's standpoint, it sounds like we're going to perhaps vote on the application from the town administrator's office.
I see Testegan just chimed in. This is the Community Preservation Committee. I don't know if you're looking for that or the Orchard Committee.
No, this is correct. Thank you so much for letting me join.
It's fine. Just to make sure. Yes, and I thought I flipped over here because I thought Chase might join in also, but it's kind of flip-flop just because we're kind of under the gun to get all this completed. FinCom, the Select Board, and the Community Preservation, we all have a meeting scheduled at 6 before town meeting. So if there's anything that needs to get, I will know before then. We'll just make sure we have a quorum. If there's anything that needs to be revoted, we can do it then.
Yeah. For me, I mean, if it was just me personally tonight, I would be like, yes, I would vote for it. I just haven't heard from my constituents yet to be able to vote. But depending on how you guys feel you want to handle this, if you want to vote tonight, or if you want to perhaps vote before town meeting, after I hear back from my board, whatever you're comfortable with, essentially.
So, Lyle Webster is with us tonight. I don't know if you want to kind of tell us what's happened since the last town vote and how we arrived at the new appraisal, just for those of us who haven't heard the background.
Sure, I can do that. I'm happy to be the dancing bear. Phew, well, I can say from the Webster camp, we've been working the last 6 months. It's been a little bit more, pull things together here toward the end with y'all and conservation committee folks and everything else, but, thanks to Littleton Conservation Trust, hired a second appraisal. A little bit more favorable than appraisal number one. And I did prepare comments that I shared with Jim Duggan to essentially say, wish it could be different, but if this is what common policy is going to deliver today, and appraisers have to deal with fact and their own way of doing things, Gretchen and I are ready to be done. So on our side of the table with the Websters, we have worked with the siblings to recalibrate expectations, still believing that the number we presented in the fall is more closely approximated to the value of the land. But since conservation land is worth $0 today, we are back at an appraisal of $730,000. Gretchen and Lyle Webster have more and better things to be doing with our time, and we will make the world a better place in our own ways. So we are ready to work with the $730,000 appraisal. The ultimate goal has been, always will be, conservation and preservation of this land, which is the overlapping of colonial and pre-colonial time on this patch of earth. And since we could be hit by a bus tomorrow, we would like it preserved forever. So as the steward du jour, 2 families have owned this land since it came out of Neshoba Plantation, the Bulkleys and my family. And Gretchen and I bought out the siblings so that we could see through to this day. And we would like your help, please. I'm grateful for everyone in town that has worked toward this day so that it can be acquired by the town of Littleton. And we would like to see that through, whatever the final steps are. I'm not the one that made it a rush, but here we are. So if we can get the job done, I appreciate all your help.
I myself commend you and Gretchen for
Absolutely.
taking this route.
Thank you, Sam. Appreciate it. Yeah, long road and not necessarily the way I would have imagined, but here we are learning how all of this works.
Okay, thank you. I hope everyone's had a chance to kind of read over, the application. You know, basically it's purchasing the parcel, which is 36.49 acres, located on the corner of Bulkley and Crane Roads. There are a number of photographs that we were presented with, and all this was, you know, presented at the last town meeting as well. So nothing really has changed, right, on the acreage and anything like that. The goal of the purchase is to provide permanent protection for the property's natural resources, which include forest uplands and wetlands, a vernal pool, a perennial and intermittent streams. The purchase will also protect the Native American and historical resources on the property and will provide public walking trails in the area of Littleton that is not well served by nearby trails. The purchase timeline, if the town meeting votes positively on May 7th, we could purchase after, once the town and the seller agree on a closing date. I did get a note from, I think it was from Robin Healy, the treasurer, that it may have to happen after July 1st, but it could happen on July 1st, once the new fiscal year pops into place. As we mentioned, the project cost is $730,000, and we're asking for up to 30 in soft costs. Linda had pointed out on the funding on Exhibit B, it's still under the budget. It says the sole component of the total project price is the purchase price up to $730. So we're going to have them add in plus. Oops. I get to stop and look at this. Okay. To have Jim add into that there's another $30,000. So that may be another thing that if we want to wait until, another 30,000.
Is it on the eligibility or just on the?
Linda, was that also in the eligibility?
I don't think the eligibility said anything about that. I think it was only in the funding under budget.
Here's the, see, on the eligibility request, he had,
It's just penciled in.
yeah, we penciled in with an asterisk, which goes down to here, purchase of land, 730, soft costs, and the other costs, in closing costs. There was a survey that was done last year, but that's not eligible. We can't reimburse the town for that because it's already been paid for. And I checked with Stuart Saganor on that, and he said, yes, you can't supplant funds that have already been expended for something, so.
I just had a thought, could we go to the town meeting and say that the purchase price is 730 and not say anything about the soft cost, because we could do that independently out of the open space bucket? I mean, just to avoid the complication at town meeting floor.
I would think you'd want to put that out there for people though, so they can weigh the whole picture of the project.
Okay, I mean, that's a judgment
It'd have
call.
to be we have to fund it through town meeting at some point.
Yeah,
So,
okay,
right, any expenditure has to be approved through town meeting eventually. So the only thing the only place you conceivably could do that is that we did give or we were intending to give Amy a trust fund for conservation activities that are,
she could take it out of that.
she could take it out of that, but
I think make
Yeah.
a package of it, okay.
Carolyn, could you clarify what we're sort of deliberating right now?
Well, right now, we're just talking about the project, and then we have to get into the funding. That's the real thing that we also need to come out with. They need to know tonight really how we want to fund it.
Right.
If we don't vote on anything tonight, though, they're not gonna be able to prepare the handouts for town meeting.
Yeah, we really do need to vote.
We're treating eligibility and application together?
Yes,
So
yeah.
for eligibility, are we sure that the 30,000 can be spent?
Yeah, I checked with Stuart Saganor today and he said absolutely put that in. In fact, he suggested it when I was talking to him. He said, make sure they put in, and he gave us the $30,000. He said that would cover anything that you need to do. But yes, he said, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he said estimate
That's
a reason,
reassuring.
it's reasonable up to 30,000 for expenses after. But he said the only thing we have to make sure is that we break it out so that we have that purchase price, because you can't have, the purchase price can't go over the appraisal, but you can have these soft costs as a separate item, a separate item within the warrant article.
And it still counts as acquiring.
Yeah.
Those $30,000 are.
Yeah, support.
checked both boxes. That's good.
But those are only gonna be spent for invoices, and anything that's not
Right.
spent will come back.
So if we have to vote on something tonight, which it sounds like we do, maybe we can say with these edits, with this particular language that we want or need for the 30,000.
Yeah, I agree. So I suppose, the eligibility is the easy part. I
Right.
think, why don't we, vote that through? This is again, the project is for this 36.49 acres. Let's see, are we the owner? No, obviously we're not. That's what we'd like to do. I don't know if there are any other questions on eligibility of the project. We have
I'll make a motion to approve the eligibility of the Webster property for acquisition.
Second that.
okay, it's been moved and seconded, to approve the eligibility. Linda is remote, so we'll have a roll call. Andrew,
Aye.
Sam,
Aye.
Solomon, Mitt,
Aye.
Jerry,
Aye.
Bartlett,
Aye.
Carolyn is an aye, and Linda?
I,
Thank you.
Thank you. That's step one. Um, So let's do this. Let's close this out. And I have the project list tonight. Oh, for Pete's sake.
As it would be.
Wait. And the problems without even opening.
Milk chocolate. I still want to sleep tonight.
Close the computer all day long, and yeah, everybody's watching you.
Roll call. Is it on?
Well, while we're waiting for this to open, I think we all know what it says. Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't know, I'm familiar enough with the project, I think. I don't have any questions about that. It's just the funding piece that
Yeah.
is the,
Was it that bottom PowerPoint on the
Yeah.
list of?
Yeah, that's for
Yeah.
the funding. All right, so shall we talk about the funding scenarios?
Just one thing about the $730,000.
Mhm.
Do you want it to say something about the up to purchase price? And, or is that something language we just drop? and
No,
say
we
that
need that.
The
We-
motion is gonna be awarding $730,000 be awarded for the up to purchase price for the property.
No, we have to make sure that our motion says 730 for the purchase price and up to 30,000 for, I guess you call them soft costs, is that
Additional.
additional
Yeah.
okay.
administrative costs? Is that fair?
Could I say that the total project cost also includes a $30,000 amount for legal fees and other soft costs?
No,
No,
it's gotta be very specific. And then when we get to it, we also depending on which scenario, if there's any bonding, we have to make sure that's very specific as well.
Okay, so how did it not hit?
How did it not hit what?
What language should we have in the motion?
Well,
that was just the eligibility, so we haven't done the, always said it's
I'm
eligible.
just getting ready.
Yeah, well, let's finish. Okay, so funding scenarios. Robin Healy, our treasurer, got together with Ryan Ferrara, Jim Dugan, I think Kim Quovo was there as well, and gave us three options. And I think it's one of these three that I don't think we need to monkey with the options. So the first one is to just pay in full from the CPA open space reserve, which right now we're at 1,234,670. So if we paid the 730,000 out of that, we would have 504,670. And I think she said that includes. That would include the balance that we're expecting to get for fiscal year 25, which is 219, the 219,279, which is an estimate. So, we would still leave ourselves enough to, any of the debt reserve that we have. We still have the Williams land, the Cobb land, and the Yap land that we're paying on.
How much did you say would be left over?
504,670.
Oh, okay, good.
And what, do we have those, what the annual totals are for those
For
Debt
those,
service?
this year they were. Let's see, anyone have a town meeting booklet?
Something told me to bring it.
I have about 3 of them in my house. And
I think I do. Yeah.
Okay. Whoops, I got it. You can see here. So this is this year, so it'll be a little bit less probably next year. Yapland was $5,100. Cobland is 19,200 and the Williams is 34,800.
Okay.
So 20,
Yeah, that's fine.
50,
That's-
50, 60,000. So it would definitely, the only other thing, and I think it was mentioned at last night's FinCom meeting, is if something else comes up,
That's the thing.
you
yeah.
know, so.
Yeah, I'd be hesitant to wipe out
Yeah.
that larger chunk of the open space bucket.
So the second, it's on this slide, sure.
Keep talking. Is there any consideration of undesignated?
Good.
Some? I don't know.
Another question, how much is in the undesignated balance?
Yeah, I'm not sure how much is left in that.
I know, and I'd asked them for all the buckets and I only got. Wait a second, lane.
And could the soft costs come out of that?
Potentially, yeah.
Or, I mean, any part of it, or any portion or amount that we
Mm.
decide is appropriate, I
Yeah.
guess, could come out of there.
I'm trying to get to the next slide.
Can you hover over like a little arrow in the corner? Isn't there usually one for PowerPoint that you can like?
No, and I can't, it's like stuck because I did some resume slideshow. Oh, God, I don't know.
Computers in Harvard never do this, right?
Harvard computers never.
It's got too many windows open. So the second option is to bond half of the purchase. So we would pay 365 from the reserve. And then we would borrow 365,000 for 3 years. So as you can see that what the principal that they would pay, it's a 5%. And so the line down the interest payment, if you look over 36,000 is what we would pay in interest if this is the scenario we chose. So for I know, fairly short money. This would allow us to keep more money in our reserve account, yet spending another 36,000, which
So
would
this-
come from our account as well.
Putting in thirds,
Yeah.
third down and then a third and a third.
Yeah,
It doesn't really change much, because either you're taking it out of the reserve, or you're taking a pretty substantial chunk of your annual deposit and spending it out, and that's not available, so it's sort of a toss-up of, yeah, do you want to leave the money in the account and pay it down over a couple of years, or you take it all out now and then the account grows faster over the next 3 years. Doesn't seem like there's a whole lot of,
Mm,
Unless something else became available
That's-
tomorrow, then,
but then you bond that one, right?
yeah, you just have to have enough deal to be able to do that with.
Do down payment. bond,
Yeah.
okay.
I would be more inclined to keep as much of that principal as possible, and looking at the projects. And I know that there's a third option, which is completely bonding it out.
Look at that one. That's bonding the entire purchase again for the same, so that interest would cost us $73,000. So that's basically what this option would cost us.
So I think, I mean, between 2 and 3 is where I'm leaning, whether we want to do the whole thing bonded or put down a chunk.
It's for the same period.
Yes,
Same.
they would do it for the same period.
Or paying twice as much in interest.
Or,
And you're paying substantially more than what you can reasonably expect to get from them,
Yeah,
so.
I mean, I think the interest is just an estimate, so it will be likely be less than that.
yes, and she mentioned too
Yeah.
that the 5% was just kind of a,
I mean, that's,
Round number.
that's a round number guess.
What I've heard Steve say is that we're still getting 4.
Yeah, it
a
should be,
little over
they
4.
expect it to be less than
All right,
that.
but it's still a
It's still gonna
number,
be something,
Yeah, it's still
right?
something. Yeah,
and it would still be. You'd still be spending more than the annual expected income.
not more than, I mean,
Well, I mean, what was it, two, it was two,
oh, in this case.
in this
yes.
case, yeah,
Right, so you would still end up paying down some reserves,
yeah,
pulling some reserves to make these payments, right?
right.
yeah,
So
so,
then you have to, you have to
Yeah.
decide.
I mean, this year we're putting, the 279 into the bucket, so. We definitely go back to this.
I need talking out of option 1 because I'm not a self-insurance kind of guy. I think of the interest that we pay as sort of insuring against the possibility that another project comes along. Because in 3 years, if another project doesn't come along, I'd much prefer to have paid cash now.
I see that point, but I just think if we have more capital in the reserves to jump on something, we're in a better position than the potential to borrow for something down the road. Especially something that maybe is a big ticket item where we're gonna have to put more down, as opposed to less and borrow the remaining funds.
Are we talking about the likelihood of a land purchase, most likely?
More than likely, and those can pop up at any time. It's just the nature of the beast.
I'm holding my tongue about how quickly they transpire and how fast. I'll be good.
But 3 years would have been a nice timeline, right?
I'll behave.
Just to weigh one other thing is if something did come up, what's the likelihood that it would exceed what we have in undesignated if you added to it? Because we're allowed to use that to spend how we need.
With the rising prices of lands, I mean, especially residential properties, I mean, land is bananas right now, and I mean, we could be looking at millions of dollars down the road if we wanted to really secure a beautiful piece of property that was vulnerable in town. And, you know, to have that money stored up, I think is the best case scenario, as opposed to having 500,000 in it and then a $2 million property pops up and not having that much to put down or wiping out what we have to put down and then borrowing. We're going to be in worse shape than having, you know, what we do now and just bonding this out.
Carolyn, are you looking up what's in undesignated?
I'm trying, yes.
And of course, I'm a little hesitant too to really dip into undesignated because Park and Rec and other buckets look towards that too for certain funding pieces. So I wouldn't want to go after everybody's money to cover the spread this time around. I just think.
Well, again, I think it's in my mind, it's sort of the, you know, much like if you were gonna bond it, you would take it out of undesignated and we can repay undesignated.
Hmm.
You know, it's not necessarily taking it all. It's just a shuffling for the short-term savings. I think, lean a little with Mitt that we have a large pot of money sitting there. It's at the end of, at the end of 3 years, you're essentially gonna be in the same place, plus or minus $70,000. It seems like just, I don't know that, I'm not sure that it really changes our capability much, because if we're bonding it, it just means that our future availability for those 2 or 3 years is less than what it would be, so.
Yeah, it's a tough scenario either way. I just think having that money sitting there and available is a little better in the short term if something does pop up, because I mean, land, it's erratic when it, in terms of popping up. So, that's why
Yeah, I guess, I don't know, I would argue you could say, $500,000 in the bank with a $200,000 income for the next 3 years and beyond is potentially better than $1 million in the bank and 100,000 in income for the next 3 years.
yeah, I mean,
I don't know. I mean, I don't know
It's a,
it's
a guess.
It's a guess, but off the top of my head, it feels like it's as good or better. And even because you could, at that point, you can bond for that. You can bond for 10 years, knowing that you have a pretty consistent income. Whereas if we don't have that income in years 1 to 3, then our ability to bond and pay back a bond is limited. I don't know. This is finance far beyond my my level of expertise, but that's just my.
Does the finance committee have an opinion?
Yeah, I mean, I think when we were talking about last night, I think the majority kind of felt that some sort of a banning would be wise, just, because you don't know what's gonna come up. I kind of, I struggle too. I mean, I hate to give away 36,000 or 73,000 for nothing. So, I mean, I guess personally, I would tend to lean toward 1 or 2. 2 seems more, palatable to spend on it and still keep some in reserve, but, you make a good point. You just don't know what's coming. It's just hard to predict. It's not like it's something that, you'd have to spend money on, but you don't want to necessarily pass up something that, that you want, so.
But if nothing comes up for 2 more years, then
Then we've lost it,
I
right?
guess it doesn't matter. I think there's at least 500,000 in the undesignated bucket.
Oh, okay.
So we have a pretty good chunk in there, and then we'll be
Okay.
putting more in this year. So if another property did come up, we could bond that one, more than.
It's tough.
Yeah.
Maybe option 2.
Kind of a compromise between. I mean, I think option 3 doesn't. I don't think that buys us much, and we lose.
70K, I mean, that
Yeah,
is
that's-
pretty
yeah.
substantial.
Yeah, that's a lot of money to throw away.
I mean, we've had projects that are less than that.
Yeah. I think I could get behind option 2. I think it's a good chunk down. It saves us a lot of capital in the reserves, and I mean, our borrowing won't be as strained, and we won't have as much of an interest spent in the end. Especially if it's lower than 36. I mean, if it comes in,
Yeah.
20 and change, I mean, even better.
It's not going to be much lower.
I'm leaning towards option 2, though I do understand the arguments for option 1, but I'm still leaning towards option 2.
Well, if we do option 1, we're down to 500,000 in the bucket for a year, but then after a year, we get up to 700 again.
Mhm.
And after 2 years, we're up to 900. So
We
I
are,
could go either way, but I think that there's a strong argument for 1.
I mean, there is, but I just picture, what if a million plus property pops up tomorrow and then we're that much more limited in terms of our immediate use of the money?
Yeah, I mean, that's where I would like to hear from somebody with a better understanding of the finance part of it, of, if you have these dollars in the bank and this income stream, what is your buying power versus if you have more dollars and less income, right?
Yeah.
That's the,
'Cause I'm just thinking, if we have 500K in the bank, a $2 million property comes up next year, we're gonna have that much less to put down, and then our borrowing power is, I mean, I don't know if it would be limited or if, we're gonna
and that's
strain
what
our.
well, that's what I'm wondering though, is if you, right, if we had, or do we have this, I don't know, yeah, it's,
And then if something else pops up and we wipe out that undesignated and take our open space down by that much, I mean.
at that point, we're just out of luck.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
If 3 large, great properties pop up in, a 2-year time span, then unfortunately, we're out of luck.
then there's a problem, yeah.
Well,
But
ask the,
borrowing a power is going to be based on income, isn't it? Rather than how much money we have in the bank. And that's the way it is with retail.
Yes and no.
Okay.
It's tough.
Yeah.
We should have had Robin come. I think, I've been watching the FinCom meeting last night, and Steve seemed,
Yeah,
Pretty-
Steve and Fred, I think, definitely felt, that
Mhm.
a borrowing would be probably prudent, but it's really, I mean, you really can't say which is gonna be the better option until 3 years out, when you see, what's
That's
happened.
too
It's
late.
just no way
What have we done?
to predict
Well,
for certain.
Since I brought it up, I mean, my impetus is to go with 1 because I'm against self-insuring or I'm against insurance. I'd rather just self-insure and wish that we were lucky, right? Saul? But I think with other people having discussed it and we wish they were here, it's kind of a boring approach to take the middle one, but it's kind of safe too. It won't raise any eyebrows. So I'd support number 2 also. And I think, Jerry, you started sort of the conversation saying you would lean for 1 or 2. So I think 3 is off the table. And I think we could,
Yeah.
I think most people would. I don't think we'd have any no votes tonight for option 2, I guess. Wouldn't come from me, I guess.
I know, for 365,000, it's either way. It's like, it's not a lot to borrow, but it's not a lot to spend either.
And we make some bankers happy. Somehow.
Yeah.
It's just that they're anonymous. That's the part that really kills me. Some
Uh,
anonymous person will be really happy.
no, they'll just be moderately happy.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
36,000 is rounding to what they're actually doing.
They'll be annoyed by the papers.
Yeah.
It's municipal, so it's tax-free for them.
Oh,
Yes.
So that'd be
Oh,
quite.
you're more cynical than me. Pretty good. Hey,
Well, maybe we could ask the housing trust for a loan.
oh.
This meeting just took a turn.
That would make income happy.
Well, and the
Spend
other
all of our money.
Yeah. And the other thing too is, I mean, if it comes to next year, we can always put more into open space. If it comes down to, oh my gosh, there's a big project on the table, instead of we put what, 40
40
and
in.
whatever, we could put 60 in.
Yeah.
But that means less money for Bartlett, less
Oh,
money
no.
for Saul. You know what I mean? Like,
I know, but that's what,
No,
that's what we have to do is think of the balances of all those. I mean, like, you know, and the undesignated too. I mean, we've been putting more into that, but we also have the state match. But I mean, that's the way we have to do it is decide. And the other thing that we have talked about in the past is, do we put more into undesignated just so that we can dip into that however we want? And there's a lot of traction for that. And we've always talked in the past, that's not really what we like to do, but
because I feel like having those categories, knowing that they have X amount every year in revenue or in their reserves is kind of a reassuring thing, because if they do have a project pop up, they're not competing with other categories.
Also kind of gives a little bit of a,
Yes.
Yeah. But that is another option when we get to that. So there is always that. I mean, we have control over what we put into those.
Yeah, and like historic and park and rec could look at the 36,000 and say, that's a whole project for us, you know?
Right.
Give away that money, so,
Well, that's it. That's what I was thinking. I mean,
Yeah.
we've had a lot of projects that have been under that.
yeah.
Yes, Mr. Webster, please.
Two clarifying questions, if I may.
Sure.
I was paying attention eventually to realize we were out to 2 and 3. Is option 1 to use your available funds to pay outright and be done with it?
Yes.
Follow-up question, which may be parliamentarian for town meeting floor. If you choose option 1, does that mean this does not need to be a 2/3 vote because it is not a borrowing option?
Oh,
I think CPC is a majority vote, but where it's borrowing against future CPA reserves, I'm not sure where that lies.
Mhm.
So I know a
Yeah.
typical borrowing article is,
A point to ponder.
Yeah, they've got a 2/3 required vote for.
hmm,
Hmm.
that's a very good question.
Very good. Wow.
We would have to definitely get
Yeah,
clarification, because CPC articles, I think is a simple majority, if I'm not mistaken.
yes, like anything else
Everything
is.
else is,
Yeah.
But normal borrowing
Vote,
is
yeah.
2/3. Is borrowing against CPA revenues 2/3? Or is it a simple majority because it's a CPA article? That's a very good point,
When
Lyle.
did, I guess, when did we last do this? Cause we could
Yeah,
look at town records.
Brown property, right? Did we borrow for the Brown property or was that?
Williams or Brown, one of those.
We borrowed for, yeah,
No, I don't think.
Brown
we
Yeah,
did.
well,
Estate.
the ones that
There
were,
was a grant.
Was
The
it grant?
grants, yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see. What else
Okay,
is-
cash.
aren't these ones that we're paying?
The
on?
ones that we still have debt service.
The ones we
on,
still-
so-
Yeah, okay, so Littleton. See if I can do this.
Yeah, you can't-
I'm curious.
Yeah, but-
It's one of the meetings where we,
Well, if I go on the website, I can't not mouse. I have such a hard time with these.
do you know what year we bought the Williams property? Was that 2016?
Fall of 2016.
Thank
That's
you.
Williams, okay, so if I go to the town administrators,
So I think if we went in.
town meeting documents. Boston News and Herald. Town meeting documents by, what did you say, 2016?
Fall.
Fall, special town meeting.
Towards 2020.
we should have a T-shirt on the back, you know, and then it'll be Webster 2020. Like the tour, the world. And then you can have different asterisks and bar.
Articles, motions and recommendations.
Classification.
Aha, here it is. So Williams.
Require for conservation, Article 12.
I was
Yeah,
here.
you got some around
Details, and I'm not gonna have backup information.
Two-thirds.
Excuse me.
Yeah, this says 2/3 recording.
But this wasn't put under a standard CPC article. This was just an outright. It was from the select board and it was acquire land at 31 Boxborough Road for conservation.
Oh, so the CBC just paid the.
Oh, no, here it says, Article 12, the Community Preservation Committee would be asked to recommend to use CP funds in July.
And borrowing authority, so they included borrowing authority in that one, which is why it's 2/3.
All right.
Hmm.
Oh, there was probably a revised motion. I wonder if that's part of it. Oh, yes, look at that. The revised motion was Article 12. So, CPA, yeah. Okay. Transferring from the open space reserve, 260,000. Undesignated reserve, 210,000, and appropriating and borrowing the sum of 403,000. So that required a 2/3 vote.
Am I remembering correctly, but it was contingent on getting the grants? Like if the grant money came in, we wouldn't take, or am I thinking of something else?
That was the Brown property.
That was Brown. Okay,
Yeah, because Williams were paying debt service on it.
that's right. So it had to have,
So wait, so yeah, which property that we bought recently is not on the debt service list? That's what we're looking
The
for.
Brown
So
property.
it's the Brown, so we're
Yeah,
looking for the Brown article.
yeah, because that was like half us and you got that big, and was it the MVP grant and
Yeah,
another
right.
grant or
Big grant
something?
and
So
housing.
was
for
that,
200.
was that
Yeah.
CPC?
Yeah,
Okay,
yes,
so CPC and a grant.
yeah. So there was no borrowing, but
was that 2019? I feel like I've lost track of like years. I don't know what years what anymore.
Pandemic, man.
yeah, I think, it was before the pandemic, so maybe 2018.
This is Browns Woods. It
Yeah,
was 2020.
2020,
So
wow.
during pandemic.
Yeah.
Were we on the field when we? So you have to remember, where were we when we voted?
I think it was an indoor one, if
Yeah.
I'm remembering. I know it's so hard to like place years now, like.
Just wait.
Fall 2020.
Yeah, nice weather.
Was it nice?
Yeah,
Yeah.
doing some impressive navigating around there, Carol.
I know,
That made it.
sans mouse.
It is October 17 of 2020,
Yeah, this is,
Article 8.
don't breathe on the mic. Hmm.
We did get lucky in the weather for those.
Yeah.
So I don't see a threshold though for this vote. They didn't include it like they did.
Well,
on
then it's a,
Because we
Majority.
didn't borrow.
so then it's a majority.
Yeah. So that would mean that if we did do number one, it would be a
Simple
simple
majority.
majority.
How close do we think this vote's gonna be on the floor?
I don't expect it to be close at all. I think the town wants to buy the land.
Yeah, and if it's using
If
CPA.
it was.
Yeah, because the
disputed
big
at
thing was
all.
the seat not being able to use CPA funds and
Right,
having to
right.
use
That was
general.
the, yeah.
So
I tend to agree. I don't suspect it's gonna be close, but I'm not sure that I.
You don't wanna bank
you
on
wanna
it.
go
huh?
Yeah,
gamble on that?
because if it's not gonna be close, then we're not,
And we're in a
Yeah.
whole new world of
Yeah.
clickers, so who knows?
Oh,
what the-
true,
Who knows
true.
how the results are
let's use the
gonna turn out.
terms.
Flickers are great. You're gonna love the flickers. They're amazing.
Uh,
No more hand raising?
No more hand raising. You're literally gonna have the article presented. Moderator will say, okay, I'm gonna open up the vote. You have, 60 seconds to press the keypad, and most towns have like a running total, so you'll see the numbers climb, not yes or no, but just in total. And then they'll say, okay, and close the vote, and then the numbers will pop up. It's really cool,
Yeah.
really cool.
Westford is still doing voice votes for some things, but
Westford actually had clickers in place, but
no, they're right. For anything that was gonna be close, they used the clickers. For
Oh,
the ones that you expected overwhelming majority, they just did a voice vote.
wow.
even for things that you normally just routinely say, okay, all in favor, aye, and it's like, okay, done. Even if you use the clickers, it's like a matter of seconds. Like it's really cool once you get going. Well worth the money. Town's gonna love them. Great. It's my plug for clickers.
Yeah. Pardon me, hope it doesn't get screwed up. We'll all stand up, Andrew. So,
What
so
does
in
your
that
company have to do with
case,
clickers?
My company, what?
so in that case, if we go with option two, which as we said, is not, unpalatable, is that the word? We would have a 2/3 vote.
Right.
We would force a 2/3 vote at town meeting. And if,
16% of the vote.
yeah.
That's right.
Having been
And,
down this road, working for
right,
this, what we've
yeah.
done.
And if we
You've
think
been
that
trying to
the
do.
majority of people are gonna vote for it with CPA money, is it that much of a risk that we do that?
Yeah,
But
it still pushes me further back to where I was, which is just spend the money now and keep it out of the borrowing, keep the issue away.
Yeah, so we,
We'll be back in good shape
In 2 years.
in 2 years. Reasonable shape in 1 year and good shape in 2
Yeah.
years.
I think to vote that way tonight, I would certainly want to check with my constituents before perhaps wiping out the open space, just because. I mean, it's a pretty big hit to the money, and I'd want to see what they had to say about that. I mean, in terms of approving the project, I think that's something that but in terms of funding sources, I'd be a little shaky in making that determination without first hearing from peeps on the board.
Yeah, and I mean, I would be happy to hear from somebody who can actually run the scenarios and tell us what our forward purchasing power is in both cases.
yeah, I wish
But,
someone had come to this meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I just don't want to report to the Concom tomorrow night, hey, I approved this and we're using all the money. No, not all the money.
that's why they sent you here,
Yeah.
to make those hard decisions.
I kind of thought Chase was gonna, well, he'd be the same way. He wouldn't have been able to talk to everybody. But if we don't vote tonight, like Jerry said, they're not gonna be able to put the warrant together, which they really need to do.
Well, we're right.
I mean, we can't vote on it at 6 o'clock on before.
We'd be able to
Can
vote.
we,
Yeah, I mean, they'd have to like write up two and, pull one.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
that's a lot of paper. They don't
Yeah,
want to print.
yeah.
I'm wondering could we approve the project and have the funding mechanism pending? Or is that
Yeah,
set
it's
to
the
be in
same
stone?
That's what needs to
Can
be.
can we vote one way and then make a motion on the floor if there's a lot of opposition?
I think we want to probably look as solid as possible
Yeah.
before
No,
town
but I
meeting,
mean,
less shaky.
If we are looking for the 2/3 vote, and it seems like that's unlikely from the floor, that we can we amend our motion on the
I mean, you're
floor
not gonna have any-
to go with all cash?
Hmm.
No, that I
No?
would not.
Okay.
I would, the optics of you're gonna lose a 2/3 vote, so change it to a majority vote is
Yeah.
Yeah, really.
not good.
All right.
It's just a shame that I didn't have that full Concom input before
Yeah.
coming into tonight's meeting. If it was just me tonight,
But I think, last time they were for it and it was
Yeah.
more money, potentially, so it was gonna, pretty much wipe out the bucket, even if we did, even if we did this.
It was gonna wipe out the operating budget.
Right.
yeah.
But if CPC could have paid for it,
Mm,
you know, it would have, one of these scenarios, even the second scenario of taking half of it would have, you know, wiped out pretty much all of the, you know.
Yeah, the open space.
And what Steve was preaching to us when we were talking about the increasing the surcharge to 2% was you can bond everything. I mean, he was almost acting like, you know, give 10,000 up front and bond the entire project. So if a big open space project did come through next year, as we were talking earlier, it doesn't sound like the finance committee has any issue with bonding
No,
a larger amount. And what are the odds that we would get another big open space project next year?
You
I
never
mean, it's
know.
only, I mean, potential maybe, but
What's the expression? Expect the best, plan for the worst.
Yeah, I just honestly, I don't know which gives us better buying power. That's my. And I guess it really probably doesn't matter because
Well, we've got a constant income stream.
exactly, right, so if we don't spend the money this year. Sorry, if we do the partial bonding, don't spend all of the money this year. If we want to spend, if we wanted to bond something else, it just means that we're gonna take that money from the reserve to pay the bond in the first couple of years anyway. I mean, essentially, I think
It's just more capital to have an immediate need to throw at something, but
yeah. I'm not sure how much value there is in that.
it would buy us a year though, right? Because the first payment, the 138 would be FY 26. Because we would buy it next year.
right, after
Right.
July 1st, yeah.
Yeah.
You guys are doing great. Do you ever get to use a lifeline?
That's exactly what I want.
Jim, Chase, Gary.
I know.
Steve.
Steve,
We
right,
should have asked one of them to come in.
I tried texting, but I haven't heard back yet.
But you're right, he was all for bonding.
Yeah, but I don't know about the 2/3, that's,
Yeah, I know, that's a wild card. I didn't even,
Yeah.
that didn't even,
yeah, I don't
I
think the
don't, nobody
bonding
has
is an
mentioned that. I
issue.
don't think anybody thought of that.
It's a bad issue, but the 2/3 does give me pause. Although I don't think, I mean, I'd be shocked if it was an issue, but I wouldn't want it to be, so.
And this is fairly early in the night, so they're gonna be, you know, it'll be a big audience.
The full crowd.
Yeah, they put all the big things up front this time. Oh,
But, well, Andrew, you say you want the conscom so that they won't end up with, well, I say they, but it's actually CPC who controls the money. The conscom doesn't control the money.
no, the Conscom doesn't control the money, but it's it's pretty much the biggest customer for open space dollars. So, I mean, I would want them to have some kind of input, you know, as my constituents before I, you know, made a decision like that.
But
I'm
it
just
sounds like we have to vote tonight, though.
I know, I was just looking at the calendar. I mean, if we put off and waited till them, I mean, there's no time unless we met Saturday night or Sunday morning after church or something. We just don't have the time, you know, including the 48-hour window. You have to post a meeting and all.
And like a Monday meeting would be too late in the process.
I think so, because they're gonna be putting,
put all the
They're
pamphlets
having-
and booklets and
yeah, they're meeting Friday morning, I think, to finish everything up.
Well, let me make the case for option one again. I think if you put yourself in the future and looked back at this, you could say for the next land purchase that comes up, people could argue that this was a medium-sized project or even small in terms of land, and yet we were planning for the future by, I don't know, I'm trying to make it sell. Just having it with a bow on it, like done, and then we can reset we know what our revenue stream is. And we always ask for what projects in the pipeline, and we don't really see any right now. So I think we could say, we had some bonding, we bonded YAP, and it was on the books for 20 years. That was a much larger project, I think, maybe medium size. I mean, hopefully we'll have a big one someday, but I'd like to think that we could put this one forward in the rearview mirror and say to town meeting, we were efficient with our vote. We could afford it on that night, and we did.
Brian Tarbox did just text me back, and he said any borrowing would require a 2/3 vote. And if there was something that came up on the pipeline, we're still not gonna be able to move on it quickly because it still has to go before town meeting.
Mhm.
So it's not gonna move, that quick.
Yeah, I mean, right, nothing moves quickly in this world for a variety of reasons.
Especially these kinds of things. I mean, in some ways, our argument for increasing the surcharge was that we wanted to build up the bucket so that we could just pay for something,
Well, and also just to have more capacity, but.
Right, but here's the, we're gonna take it out of the bucket. We could have had more in the bucket. I mean, it's similar to like your conundrum with the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, giving you $1 million, and then they're saying, well, why aren't you using it? Why are you still stockpiling? You can say, all right, well, we're not stockpiling. We're using the funds as been put aside.
Anyway, I need the phone a friend right now. It's too bad I don't know if I should text Chase and get into secondary opinion.
Sure, why not?
Why
I mean,
not?
do you have
Let me see
an
what
idea of what your board would say?
I think they would be supportive, but I mean, I wouldn't want to make an assumption for
Right,
them.
no. Give Chase a call. Ask him.
what he said.
Never hurts to
Or,
ask.
or ping him to file into the meeting.
Yeah, I kinda thought that's on the emails on this thing.
I don't want to short circuit the discussion, but I will, when anybody's ready, I will throw a motion out, so. See where we go, see where we go.
Get in, so.
Well, maybe while we're all pondering that, can we approve the projects in advance of deciding on the funding, just as a step one?
Yeah, because that would be separate from the
From how to do it.
how to do it.
And we can do it all together, we do it as one, I'm just trying to.
I know, I know. I sit here
I
all
guess
night.
Chase can hop on the,
Want
okay, let me give him a call really quick. I'll be right back.
to make 2 votes, one for the eligibility and one for funding?
We did the eligibility
Yeah.
one, so now it's the approve the project and then decide how to fund it.
Decide how to fund it.
Sounds good.
Okay, so he's gonna try to join the meeting.
Okay.
So I think that the funding is the approval.
Okay,
So that's,
it's all one.
that's all.
Okay, all right.
That's all that we do at this stage, I think. Institutional knowledge. Biggest cheerleader. We still need a t-shirt.
Okay, so I think he's gonna be joining,
Okay.
just a
You
second.
could make a t-shirt with all the planned purchases. Spelling
Yeah, that would give it the
With-
concert tour feel.
Bumblebee Clark.
But then you'd have to
Right.
factor the cost of the new t-shirt in before you made another land purchase.
Yeah, that's just-
Soft copy.
Yeah, there you go.
But I have the old one.
To the end of
Puts
cost.
a
To the
little
end
tape
of
strip
bucket.
on.
That's kind of a cool idea, like a concert t-shirt, have all the years with the, that would be a good conservation trust thing. Yeah.
$200. That's it. It's a benefit.
Yeah, Bumblebee Park was even before CPC, way before CPC.
Mm.
1962?
Couldn't tell you that one.
67, yeah, something.
Yeah.
Oh, here he is.
Oh, perfect. Hey Chase, thank you so much for popping on.
Yeah, no problem.
So we're at kind of a standstill right here on how to proceed tonight. As you've probably seen, the town administrator's office filed the application for eligibility and funding instead of Concom this time around. So I didn't want to make any crazy decisions without Concom input in terms of funding the project and whether or not we should proceed. You know, I think that there'd be general buy-in from the Concom, but I just wanted a secondary input, especially in terms of funding, whether we're going to borrow for the project, pay all the money out of open space reserves, what the Concom would be comfortable with. But it's just you and I, so we can't really speak for the Concom.
Yeah, but I think we could say that in the past, Concom has regarded the question of how to spend the money as a question for CPC to consider. We've typically only, at least in my recollection, opined on whether or not we should acquire a parcel, right? Sort of staying in our lane, if that makes sense. And in that regard, I would think if you wanted, you could certainly, let's say CPC, you all are willing to proceed, but you don't want to proceed unless the Conservation Commission supports it, even though it is the town administrator's application technically. You could certainly condition your approval based on Conservation Commission approval of the CPC application. And unfortunately, we got things out of order and Conservation Commission is meeting tomorrow night. So in a perfect world, we'd already have that for you, but just didn't work out that way. Does that, did I answer your questions, Andrew? Did that make some sense? Linda, can you hear me?
I lost you guys just for a minute. I can hear you again now.
Yeah, I think we might have lost town hall there.
Oh, really? Oh dear.
And I said so many really smart things. You're gonna have to remind them how eloquent I
Yeah,
was
the
the
meeting
first
is
time
still
around.
the meeting's still being recorded
Oh,
though,
good.
which is weird that most people are gone, but it's still being recorded. I wonder if we should hang up and call back into the meeting. Although I guess they could call back, I guess. Let's just wait a minute and see what happens. I did I did understand what you said, Chase. I'm not sure I personally would want to do that. I think we have to come to a decision tonight.
Mhm.
I don't know how much you got tonight about the choice is either between paying it all out of CPC funds, which would leave the open space bucket with like 500,000 left in it, or whether to borrow, which would leave more. I forget how much more.
More in
the
the
open
short term, but
space, but we
more
would pay
money spent
36
overall.
Yeah, we would pay $36,000 in interest. So
Sure.
those are the two choices.
That's helpful. I just got a text message from Andrew that said they're rejoining, so.
Okay. So the other issue that I don't think they raised with you tonight was if we borrow, we need a 2/3 vote at town meeting. So if that's a concern, that's something else we should consider, right? We don't know if
Mhm.
that's a concern or not. Hi, everybody.
Hi,
Jason and I were
everybody.
on the line with Gretchen and Tess, but
No. Okay, we're back. Continue what you were saying to fill him in.
Could,
I just filled him in on the two options, you know, paying all out of the open space bucket and having 500,000 left in it versus option two, having having more in the open space bucket, but paying 36,000 in interest. But then I also just raised the issue of, you know, the 2/3 vote would be needed if we borrow. And is that a consideration?
and I'm not sure where I might have got cut off, but let me know if wherever I did get cut off, I hadn't answered your questions, Andrew.
No, I think you had said that, you thought that Conscom would leave it to CPC on how to spend the buckets. And that you would be the ones to, you know, decide what parcels should be purchased.
Yeah, I think that's how we've historically handled those types of things. I probably, if you heard that one thing element that maybe didn't come across there is the option potentially if CPC wouldn't want to go forward without Conservation Commission approval is to make sure you all know we're meeting tomorrow night to take this up. So I understand it may be less than ideal, but there is the option of voting in a way that is contingent upon Conservation Commission supporting something. I'm not sure you have to do that at all, but if you wanted to, you certainly could. I think, based on my completely uneducated opinion.
My only concern about that is what if the Conscom says, no, they don't agree with us, then what happens? Because there's so limited time at this point.
I suppose I would remind, Conscom could go a different direction. It's a different vote, so on and so forth. But just like your board, Conscom supported it at the higher price as well, unanimously.
And I think it's true. It is our
decision.
it is our decision.
Yeah.
So I think we need to, well,
I'd be in favor of doing the simplest thing, which is option one. We have the money in place. We have an income that we can pretty much rely on for the next several years, and we don't have to go through the 2/3 vote. So I'd make a motion that we support option one
I will second.
and pay cash.
Can I just ask one question though? Assuming that Conscom did not vote to support this, which I would be shocked, the town could still, the administrator's office could still bring an open space parcel to us. So, okay, so they can spend money out of that bucket as well.
Absolutely,
in a
yeah.
sense. So, okay. So, okay.
Yeah, I think it would probably struggle more at town meeting, but nonetheless, I will second Charlotte's motion.
okay, so we have to make sure we have this down. Mitt, you got your fingers ready?
Saul seconded that $730,000 be awarded to pay the purchase price in full.
So that was the
And-
funding mechanism, not the approval of the project, though. I think we have to kind of,
Well, that we approve the purchase of the property by paying cash.
And
And then I'm not sure how to put the 30,000.
Up to
soft costs in
$30,000
there.
in
For closing and.
closing
Additional.
expenses.
and do we want to take that out of open space or undesignated for the 30K?
It's so small, it probably doesn't matter.
I think it sets a precedent to take it out of undesignated.
In a good way or
In a
bad?
bad-
In a bad way.
In a bad way, okay. Then let's not do that.
Yeah, so
Because
make,
it's the open space cost, you know.
Yeah,
Okay.
with up to $30,000 of soft costs.
All from the open space fund.
all from the open space.
That works.
Is that okay?
That, Bartlett, you have my endorsement. And thank you, Chase, for being the reassuring factor here. So I'm sitting here like, I don't want to make these decisions for Concom tonight, just.
I don't know about opening it up to, we have a couple of guests. There were Gretchen, who's here, I'm sure, for moral support. I guess I would ask Tess and Bob if you have any, limited comments on what's been going on. It's good to,
I agree with purchasing it outright and being done with it. I think it sets a good precedent in all the comments I've heard. I think support that. I think I also heard you say that there was aspect from FinCom with regard to if something came up, you go with the 2% and you bond it out. Those to me seem to be sweeping comments with regard to not being concerned about a hoped for delightful situation where you've got another opportunity that taxes you to figure out how to do it. But I think it all supports in a positive direction with regard to taking the action on the motion that's on the floor.
it's good to have some feedback. Tess, do you have anything?
Yes, I feel the same way. Paying in full makes me very happy.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Oh,
Now,
that's good.
now that the motion's been made, I will also opine that you make my life much easier at town meeting by only having to clear a 50% threshold.
I think it'll be fine.
Yeah. I
So
don't think that's a
can you
critical
read
thing.
that back exactly how you have it written? Because we have to make
Yes.
sure that this is,
Bartlett moved, Saul seconded that $730,000 be awarded to pay the land purchase price in full. And that up to $30,000 be awarded for soft costs, comma, the money's coming from the open space book. I was looking for a word. Book.
Bucket.
reserve.
Bucket, reserve.
Reserve. We call them buckets, but it's really reserve. Makes it sound a little more proper. Is there any other discussion, any other questions before I'm gonna ask for a roll call vote.
The
Andrew?
Websters are grateful.
No, well, let's get around the table. Andrew,
Aye.
Sam,
Aye.
Saul,
Aye.
Mitt,
Aye.
Jerry,
Aye.
Bartlett,
Aye.
Carolyn is an aye, and Linda.
I,
And again, the Websters are grateful, and Chase, you can take the rest of the evening off.
I'm still sitting at work. There's not a lot of taking the evening off here,
Oh,
unfortunately.
no.
This evening as well as town meeting. Thank you for all of your efforts on our behalf.
Yeah, we'll let you get back on the clock. Thank you, we do
Thank you,
appreciate it.
Chase.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so
All right.
that's it. So we
That's
will, I'll pass that on to the powers that be this evening. And we'll be ready to go for.
Very good.
You guys make this look easy.
Oh, my God. This will be fun to watch back. So for the presentation at town meeting, I think Chase is going to present the project, even though it's coming from, is it coming from the TA only because Amy, do you know why that switch?
Concom didn't have time to formally vote to submit an application,
Okay.
so I think that's probably why it came from the TA, and Amy is on vacation, so it was kind of like a double, like whammy
Yeah.
in terms of preparing for this,
Okay.
But I know Concom is still meeting tomorrow night, probably just to review what happened tonight as opposed to approving an application and having it go through. So yeah, I mean, we're efficient in that.
Yeah.
We worked out a
Until
lot
what
of good
happened,
bugs.
It was very seamless.
Yeah.
Yes, very seamless.
So we don't have to worry about that presentation. I did say that I would speak on behalf of the CPC if they asked, we may get questions on why we decided to do it this way and not the other, and I sketched down those.
Yeah.
Oh,
I think-
because we have the money, we have the income stream. I'm not gonna say anything about the 2/3 vote, but.
Yeah.
I would say that 36,000 or is funding for other projects
Yeah.
that,
Right.
and spend it for interest.
Yeah, I mean, that's such little money.
Yeah.
Okay.
Jerry, can you see your paper?
And then, the other,
Yeah.
so then I said that I would speak on the other, Article 10. And I just wanted your opinion. So we have 11 projects we're putting forward this year.
So much ever,
And that is the most ever. And they are all posted to the website except for the Webster property, but they're all on the CPA portion of the website. If I talk about, we just list the projects and say, does anyone have any questions? Or should I give a little summary on each one?
Well, I think what's provided in the warrant booklet is pretty sufficient unless somebody has more.
Doesn't say anything,
Is it
really.
gonna be a-
Just list the projects.
It just lists the projects and a lot of,
Does it
Put
even
it
list
on
them
a
all?
consent
Yeah.
agenda?
It has a little description.
Yeah, it's got like a little thing, like,
Imagine if it
Real
went
little
on a
thing.
consent agenda. And the whole
it's not,
thing-
it's not gonna be
No,
on the
okay.
consent agenda, no.
Why not?
I don't know. I think because it's got so many facets to it.
Excuse me.
So just list them, and then if anyone has questions,
Yeah, that's what I would do. That's what Carolyn, because otherwise, God knows what you'll get into.
I know, and it will just like take forever. So I'm gonna ask like John Folsom if he'll be there, if they ask about, any of their projects, maybe he would speak to them. I'll bring my paperwork with me and if, fumble if I need. Linda, I don't know if you or Andrew could talk to the markers and the gravestone. I
Sure.
mean,
Yeah.
I don't anticipate too many questions for those.
Mhm.
I'm sure that Alicia Day will talk about the playing surfaces and the docks. And then, for the,
I'm just wondering if Tim is gonna frame this as a slate or individual projects.
I think they're all,
Yes.
they're considered separate appropriations, but the article is all together. So someone could vote out something.
Okay.
I'll have to find out from him how he's gonna do it.
In Harvard, the way that they did it with not only like just regular operations expenditures was they individually voted on each project down the line. It took a long time, but I feel like people,
Yeah,
if it
but I
came
don't
down,
think that's how we do it.
no, it's not how we do it, but
No, they usually just open it up for everything. But I suppose someone would just amend the article to say,
Scratch one. or-
scratch one of them,
Yeah.
which can't imagine. All right, so I'll do that. I just wasn't quite sure. I asked Ryan in the middle of an email. He didn't answer, but I think he just probably didn't see what I was asking. So I'm just gonna go through the three items. Well, it's like 5, because we have the 1% surcharge. We have the estimated state match, which we vote different percentages. Then we have the projects, we have the debt exclusion and then, or the debt service, and then we have those unspent project balances. And I think I'm just gonna run through it and let people ask. I
That
think
works.
is the easiest
Well,
one.
and I think Steve thought that they might rewrite it after this. And so they might be combined in one
Yeah.
instead of the two articles.
Well, especially now if we don't have to have a
Right.
2/3 vote for the other. All right. Okay, that's fine. I can fudge that then.
I don't know that for sure. He just thought
Yeah,
that might be
then
what they
I'm saying
were gonna
that,
do,
yeah.
yeah.
Okay. And if anyone else, when we get to town meeting, wants to speak, definitely, stand up, especially if there are questions coming. We never used to get questions, but now we're kind of in the spotlight, so. Okay. Anyone else have anything to, yes, sir.
Yeah, so Rob Brunson, 25 Juniper. I learned last night at the Clean Lakes Committee that on May 28th, the select board agenda, which I recognize is not posted and could be subject to change, but nonetheless, John was informed that the Clean Lakes Committee's lack of funding that they found themselves in, which you heard John speak to when you folks took action and very much appreciated, that's going to be on the agenda. Many of you serve on other, my opinion, very relatable, related commissions and committees. And given that I think that's a first time select board kind of forum for the matter to be discussed, I just want to bring your attention in advance, hoping that that date will hold true. I can't promise that, but I alert you to it.
What's the date?
Because I think May 28th, because I think honestly, I see it as a very raw situation, posing great risk with regard to CPC's aspect with regard to definition of maintenance versus capital.
Yeah.
I don't think that can be underestimated in terms of how tricky, and yet the lakes, as being the resources that they are, need ongoing work. And that starts to bring in the aspect of annual maintenance versus capital. It's
Right.
fraught with peril. And so many of you represent commissions and committees that I wanted to just get it out there right away so that if any of you or others on your respective groups can participate in the audience or participate in a meaningful way, I want to make notice and thank you for your time.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob.
Good to know those things ahead of time instead of on the 29th
Yeah.
of May. Yeah.
Exactly.
Anyone else have anything to? I really appreciate you all coming for this quick, Jeff wasn't able to come tonight, that's why he isn't here, but for this quick meeting,
We hashed out a lot of good things. I
yes,
think
yeah, it wasn't a quick meeting, but it was a quickly scheduled meeting is what I should say.
You got it partly right.
Yeah, I missed that very clear
All right.
there, so,
On that note, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Aye.
Sam,
Aye.
Saul,
Aye.
Nick,
Aye.
Jerry,
Aye.
Bartlett,
Aye.
Carolyn's and I, and Linda.
Aye.
All right, thank you, everyone. Good night. Town direction.
Good night, everybody.
Town meeting is Tuesday, May 7th.
When's our meeting at town meeting?
6 o'clock in the library of the
Middle school.
middle school, which is upstairs.
And Carolyn, I know that select